Super excited to announce the Law Firm Retreat Design Your Future being held this August 5th through 8th, 2026 in the Denver, Colorado area. Teaming up with Law Firm Architects, Power Strategy Group, we're going to be having an amazing opportunity for up to 15 firms to work on the business, not in the business. Find out more at powerstrategygroup.com. Welcome back, everyone. It's so great to have you. We have Niki Black, Principal Legal Insight Strategist at 8 a.m. I'm excited to have her. We've seen each other at a lot of conferences, have a lot of mutual contacts and friends, and I finally got her to be on the show. So I'm so excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm really looking forward to it. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So as always, when we talk too much before we hit the record button, we start saying some interesting things. And well, I wanted to start off a little bit with the legal, with the 8 a.m. legal industry report that came out. And so this is the third consecutive year that 8 a.m. has been tracking AI adoption in the legal industry. And you had about 1,300 respondents are gauging this information. But you also did a presentation at ABA Tech Show on this and sort of like what are the key takeaways. So why don't we walk through some of that and then sort of see what's going on in AI recently.
Yeah, sure thing. So it's our fifth year doing the report and our third year with AI data. Well, no, our third year with AI
got
data.
it.
So you talked about that, yeah.
Okay.
And we always try to have something. I try to include something at the beginning that's a top trend, and AI has obviously just been. You can't escape that for the last few years. So this year we wanted to ask some additional questions about AI and also track adoption because it's been fascinating to watch how quickly our profession has adapted to this tech and really utilized it. So some of the most interesting data points that I thought were, first of all, the fact that um, when we asked about how often did the respondents use general use AI tools for work-related purposes, it was 69% said that they did this year, which was up from 31% last year. So that's, first of all, a crazy increase over the course of just 1 year. And the fact that we have 70% of, essentially 69% of legal professionals, and that's across all roles, using generative AI for work-related purposes is unbelievable, considering it had only been out about 3 years at the time that we conducted the survey, which was last August and September of 2025. And so, especially considering that, like with cloud computing, which I wrote a book about the cloud in 2012 that the ABA published for lawyers, and it took us until after the pandemic. The cloud has really been around since approximately 2007, and it took until after the for us to reach those levels of cloud adoption. And yet here we are 3 years afterwards. And the only other thing that I found really one of the most interesting parts of the report, I thought, with that 69% of people using generative AI across a firm, the training and policy gaps were kind of nuts. So you have only 9% of respondents saying that their firms had an AI policy in place that was enforced, and only 11% said that they received mandatory training on generative AI. So that's a really big gap between adoption and actual governance within a lot of firms.
When for the 1,300 respondents that were providing this intake, what would you say these are more small, mid-sized firms or big law or a mixture? Or
Yeah, we had definitely a larger percentage of respondents that were from small law, solos and small firms. And the smallest percentage was big law. But also, that's an indication of people in decision making positions within big law. There aren't that many of them. So, you're not going to, and a lot of people aren't able to weigh in on a lot of these issues in big law because they just don't have any insight into it because that's not a function of their role. But yeah, definitely was more targeted. The respondents were more solo, small, but we had a decent number of mid-size, which we sort of consider up to 20. I know that mid-size runs the gamut depending on who you talk to. 20 lawyers. So.
I think what you found is sort of what I've sort of seen, but just didn't have it statistically in front of me, that like when I do AI presentations to law firms or lawyers, like it really they're all over the place in terms of their adoption and their ease of use and sort of like what how the firm is like their AI policies or the lack of and the training and it's sort of hard to even have these conversations because you don't know are they vibe coding on the weekend or are they just dipping their toe in their first AI account ever, and they're sort of like all over the map.
And it's hard when I speak to lawyers about it because, um, like you said, people in the room are at all different levels of understanding and usage. And so some people will be like, wow, that was too basic. And others are like, I have no idea what's happening, like when the
Yeah,
presentation's over.
exactly. Like, thinking about even how we prepare, like, ABA Tech Show, being on the board and everything, it's like, it's really hard because, some people walk away and say, "Well, that was basic," and then, like you said, and some people like, "That what just happened?" And so we're like, "Okay, we're gonna have to have, like, the advanced tracker," but what's advanced, Like, some universal, rating system of your knowledge of use of AI or something along those lines. And then things are changing. Like even when I have guests like yourself that we're talking about AI and legal tech, I tell my team like we got to get this one out because this is good. What we're talking about might sound old, or we'll be wondering what we're talking about if we don't get it out soon enough. But we were preparing, you were mentioning the Claude Cowork legal plugin, which came out I think like in mid-February and really sort of like rocked a lot of people's worlds. What Tell me what you've seen with it and how lawyers can use it.
This episode is sponsored by Candle AI, the legal email assistant that helps legal teams spend less time on client emails. You heard me right, spending less time on emails. Candle AI works with both Gmail and Outlook, so you don't have to learn a new tool, and then it connects with popular case management systems like Clio, Filevine, iNetSume, and more to come. It instantly shows you your case and the client details the moment you open a client email, and right inside your inbox. Then that means less context switching and time spent jumping to different tabs to figure out what you need to respond. Candle can also draft context-aware responses to client emails and makes it easy to create, edit, and manage your email templates. If you want to save time and take back control of your inbox, check out Candle AI. I highly suggest it.
Well, I've seen, a significant interest in it. I've seen a lot of chatter across all of the different social media forums where lawyers are trying to understand and use tech. Claude had a webinar for the legal plugin 2 weeks ago, and it had
Yeah.
20,000 attendees. I mean, that's kind of crazy. And then I've personally, I have it available to me, and I've experimented with it in a couple of different contexts. One of them is my husband and I are starting a winery, sort of a virtual winery, and I've used it to
Oh,
help with the licensing applications, the compliance issues, Claude and generative AI in general. But then once Claude Legal came out, I started using that specifically rather than just a generative AI tool. And it's been super helpful in that context. Since that was definitely not, I was a litigator. I didn't do compliance and,
mhm.
licensing applications and stuff like that. And certainly nothing to do with liquor laws. And then the other context in which I've tested it was wearing my journalist hat. I happened to, I think it was a legal week. I met with the Midpage CEO. With Midpage is a AI startup for legal research, and they just had announced their Claude Legal plugin integration. And so I have access to Midpage, and I've also tested one of the big two legal research tools, using their LLMs and their legal AI research functionality. And I always ask the same question when I test generative AI. And spoiler alert: the Claude Legal plugged into Midpage by far was the best result. So what I typically will ask it is, there was a case that I was involved in as a young associate where I had to do a whole bunch of research up front with a client that came in and hired us, where the father was driving in a minivan. For some reason, the dog was in the front seat. The mom and the one kid were in the back seat, and they just dropped another kid off at soccer. And we have microbursts here in Rochester. They're not thunderstorms, but sometimes just huge bursts of wind. And a road that said like exit 42 or whatever it was came loose and blew through the air and decapitated the father in the front seat. And so it was like a horrible, horrible case. And I was assigned the job of researching the liability issue, researching the filing deadlines, and assuming it's the state, because it was a sign about the state highway, what are the filing deadlines when you're going to file a lawsuit against the state? What other things did we need to know? What experts would we need to line up? And it takes a long time to do that research using Boolean or natural language, because you're looking at like such random words that crop up so commonly, like road, sign, liability, projectile. Like, it's really hard to compose a search that doesn't just find all these generic terms. So it took me a couple hours just to locate cases with similar facts, because there was so much to sift through and it was such a challenging research path to follow. And then to research the deadlines, like against the state. Counties have different deadlines, and it kept coming up with county deadlines, and you do all this research and you're like, wait, it's the state, not the county, and you'd have to back up. Sometimes you just go down these paths and you get lost down them. So it took me hours to sort of come up with that. And then I went to the partner and told him about some of it. And he's like, also, we may need to get this kind of expert, that kind of expert, and the other, and we need to be aware of such and such. And so I went back and did more research. So when I ran these queries through one of the big two, Midpage alone, and then Claude through Midpage. And the idea is that each LLM is a different person, if you will, conducting the research. The one of the big two gave a decent summary of of the issues. It got some of it wrong, and it gave me some cases, but they weren't all totally relevant. Same thing with Midpage. It did a good job as well. It certainly saved me hours of time if I'd been an associate. At least they both gave me information up front that shortened a lot of that initial research, and I found some cases that were on point. But when Claude did the research using the Midpage database through the Claude Legal plugin, it provided a fantastic analysis of the issues, provided the right cases with similar fact patterns. And then it told me about the state filing deadline without my even asking. And it told me these are 3 different types of experts you may need to research and obtain to able to make your claim and to prove it. So it was an unbelievable output in like 5 minutes that would have taken me, between doing the research, analyzing it, and writing a memo to the partner, probably would have taken me, I would say, like 10 billable hours to get all that work done. And it took 5 minutes. So it was pretty impressive.
I think that whenever I think it's sort of hard to put the AI back in the bag, like it to really, I was at my kid's orthodontist appointment, and I love them, nice people, but their lobby has the internet is so horrible, even with my hotspot, and I can't even make phone calls. But I joked, I was like, I feel like I'm in the 1990s in this lobby, and and I can't even do normal things. But if I didn't have AI tools available anymore, I would freak out. I think I'd be like, knowing that you can be so much more efficient, knowing you can do more with less people or less time. It's so liberating, and it's exciting at the same time. Going back to the adoption of how can I be more efficient? How can I find more ways? So we moved the whole firm over to Claude about a few weeks ago, I guess. So I'm still getting used to it, because I was in the Chat GPT space. But I also have Gemini because we're more of a Google friendly firm too. So I'm always figuring out new things, but then they're also adding new features, and things that you tried before are better if you come back and explore it. But I'm also fascinated by just how the practice of law. I was really impressed by the keynotes at ABA Tech Show, and I know you mentioned how law is being taught to law students. I'm an adjunct professor. What are some of your takeaways on that, whether from the AI or what should they be teaching in law school?
Well, one thing that I think is going to be a huge problem for our profession, just as it is in a lot of other fields, is that there's going to be this training gap, right? Because large law firms
Mhm.
are already saying that they're reducing the number of first year hires because they are replacing some functions with AI. And that's only going to increase as the AI tools become more sophisticated and accuracy increases. And so, what is going to happen in our profession is if the law schools don't step up and find more ways to sort of incorporate um, training on the job and apprenticeships and more law clinics, not just as options, but as requirements to graduate. Um, we're going to have some really large problems in our profession because the large firms aren't going to be there training young lawyers anymore. And then the other thing that's going to happen that another law firms have to do three things: teach,
Mhm.
or law schools, I mean, teach more about AI so that students are fluent in it. They need to start providing more opportunities for apprenticeships and on the job training and making that a requirement of graduation. And they also need
Mhm.
to start training young lawyers, soon to be lawyers, how to
Mhm.
run law firms, how to, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to go out on their own, either as solos, or I think they're going to see more virtual solo or more virtual small law firms, meaning a whole bunch of lawyers that have their own firms, either virtually or in person, but having almost like these loose, informal group uh, communities where maybe even people in the same area where they live, where instead of being able to stick your head in someone's office, you have this ability to collaborate with other lawyers that are doing the same thing that you're doing and help you solve some of those problems. Um, but if law schools don't do this, these kids are going to graduate and there's going to be nowhere for them to go. They're not going to be equipped to run their own firms. And the profession is going to really experience some upheaval as a result, I think.
I completely agree with you. Like, I had a call with a whole bunch of adjuncts and some other professors full time just yesterday, and a lot of them teach law practice management or law firm entrepreneurship, but around the country. But what I've noticed a common trend is sometimes that's the only place AI gets taught, maybe, unless it's in the legal research and writing potentially, or the school's pretty forward thinking and has some AI somewhere else. But we were
Right.
all talking about that, as well as I had Sean Harrington on not too long ago, who teaches in Arizona, and just we were talking about sort of the unevenness and disparity around the country of how AI is being incorporated in the curriculum. But I agree with you. One of the things that really stuck out me when I went to TLTF last fall was someone said it's going to turn from like a pyramid where there's a lot of entry level and you're moving up, but it's going to turn more into a a diamond. And like it really took me like my head, like I was trying to figure that out but basically there's going to need less at the entry level because we're using AI and all these other tools. But then you're right, we're going to have a training problem. And generally, like we joke slash it's true that the law students are not prepared to practice law when they come out, but that who's supposed to teach them how to do it? I mean, I feel like my law firm, because I'm a practicing attorney with my law firm. I feel like I've been running a law school my whole career because everyone who comes in, I'm always teaching them something, like the law
Right.
clerks. And if I do not have at least a few law clerks in the pipeline, then I might not have a good associate potential. And so I see that need for the training. And I've also had, Jordan Furlong, and we had some talks about this too. And just that I think that apprenticeship, externship, there's sort of have to change the model. But I think that, there's also there's a really good comment recently, and they said, well, we're teaching to the test. We're teaching to the bar. And
Right.
so I think that's where the disruption has to happen, where we change what the goal is or how the goal is evaluated, because practicing law and passing the test don't necessarily have to be the same, or are not exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And another part of the problem is that when you do have those classes, not very many students enroll, or when you have people come and talk about AI, there are not a lot of students there. And it's because they sort of are tunnel vision
Yeah,
towards
makes
like
sense.
their
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they and they don't think they need to know this. They don't think it's important. So if the law schools don't mandate it and make them think it's important, they're not going to focus on this unless they happen to have an interest in it. Um, I recently spoke at my law school, and afterwards at a reception, I was talking to a young woman who was a first year who had experience with neural net programming. And she was and I said, you have to continue to, I know you're a first year and you're probably overwhelmed, but you cannot let that skill slip. That is highly unusual. And it's probably going to be incredibly valuable for you in 2 years, 2.5 years when you graduate. But she didn't seem to understand the how unusual that was and what an unbelievable skill that could be. Then the other thing I wanted to mention, though, like, so I just don't think that the law students believe that this is a skill. And then the other thing is a problem that the law firms are going to have in 4 or 5 years is they're going to have no one to promote and no one to lateral in because people aren't going to have enough experience. Usually they lateral in from other firms, someone who's practiced 5 or 6 years. But I think there's going to be this moat of there's not going to be anyone there to promote, and the law firms are going to be stuck. And maybe that's where all these solo and small firm lawyers where people had to graduate and start their own firms, maybe they're going to be sitting pretty and they're going to be the ones that get lateraled in. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Hmm. And where do you think this plays into this whole like MSO and sort of like this conglomeration effect of or attempt at law firms where they're trying to consolidate sort of small, mid-size and sort of what they did in the dental market and some of the medical space in the past?
Oh, you mean like in and also the veterinary space, like private equities coming in and taking over everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think that we're heading in that direction. The liberalization in England happened years ago, and um, Richard Susskind kept predicting it was going to happen here, and it just still hasn't really quite gone to this point. But there are, across the country, different, sandboxes for both
Mhm.
allowing non-lawyers to handle certain types of um, parts of practicing law or certain types of representation, and then also non-lawyer ownership of firms, which is sort of what you're referring to. And these always are uh, framed as access to justice plays, but that's not what they ever end up being. They end up being capital. I always say capitalism always trumps altruism. It ends up being these capitalism plays. Like it ends up being private equity. It ends up being the big four in accounting that come in and start taking over a whole bunch of different legal functions that are, overlapped with what those big accounting firms do. And at the end of the day, it's just going to be what you're seeing happening in medical and dental and veterinary practices. I don't think it's to the benefit of the patients what's happening in those spheres.
Mhm.
It's to the
Yeah.
benefit of the PE companies making all the money off of them. So I don't think it bodes well for us, but I think that may be where we're headed.
Well, it's sort of like multiple changes or disruptions all happening at the same time, right?
Mhm.
And I know there's a lot of advocates for the non-lawyer ownership and the management services, organizations to try to consolidate efforts and make firms more efficient. And I mean, I know there's like strong camps on both sides, whether pro or against. But I think between just this, let's just say the movement of this becoming more popular, and then the AI sort of taking out a lot of entry level positions, it's going to be challenging for those entering the legal market in the next several years, I think. And then we really do need leadership to address the training gap, like you were talking about. I I don't know, and I think also if going back to what we started off with at the beginning, like if firms are not adapting, they're going to be extinct, and they've got to find ways to stay on top of things because if you're still doing it the old school way and someone's able to do it in a fraction, like sort of like how you mentioned using the different tools and doing it within 5 minutes or versus 8 hours or something like that. I mean, that's a whole day versus 5
Yeah,
minutes.
right. But there are
Yeah.
definitely lawyers that I was talking to someone at my local through my local bar association, this person never used generative AI. I mean, there are lawyers that are still not using it, which is sort of
Oh my
shocking.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, they haven't even tried it in their own personal lives. I don't know how they're finding anything online if they're not using generative AI because Google search has gotten so horrible, but
Well, and actually, I did a lot of marketing speeches last week, and I keep telling people, like, people are searching on their AI tools versus Google, and
yeah.
you gotta be prepared for that. Like, Google used to have the market, on ads, LSAs, all that stuff, but people and then the irony was, like, the very next day, I just asked my consult, before they left, I was like, how'd you find us?" And he snickered, and he was all like, AI, and I was like, "Which one?" And then he was like,
Yeah.
Copilot, and then I think he also did Gemini or something, I was like, "Well, thank you, Google and Microsoft," yeah, I think that's a whole 'nother thing is, like, how to maximize your GEO, the generative engine optimization. I don't know if there's, like, a quote, unquote, "secret." I think it's just be good at your SEO and then the GEO will come, but unless do you know what the code is on that and how to maximize your AI searchability?
I don't. That's definitely not, I know that there are probably people on our marketing team that are not just probably, that are deep in that, and they
Uh-huh.
know a lot about that, but, I'm on the product side now, and even when I was on marketing, I didn't have a lot to do with, SEO and search and that type of thing. I've always been more of a creating the content for the sake of the content, not for the search engine, but
Well, and I think but just the whole fact that, like, those listening know that they need to stay on top of how the clients are finding them and that for the consumer, change. I also we're seeing a lot of, like, DIY with, like, clients going and drafting things and then wanting review of what they draft or, countering your answer to on AI, and then I'm like, "Okay, well, if you agree with them that your AI responds so much, then just why don't you hire it instead of me?" Like, it's
right, right.
fine.
Yeah, I feel I went to the doctor the other day and I was like, "I was researching AI, I'm really sorry, but, like, what about this?" Like, you feel like such a I know they're probably so sick of hearing that, you know?
I know. I mean, I guess there is a fine line of, like, having that being an advocate and just having healthy dose of questioning and preparing and that's good. And I think that's another thing thinking about Richard Susskind. One of my takeaways from some of his research and books were like, that the lawyers don't have an oligopoly or a monopoly on legal knowledge anymore, and that's more readily available. And that's wonderful. But I think it's also just this whole sort of dismantling of the norms that had been in place for hundreds of years, almost all in the last couple of decades, and just so rapidly in the last few years as well. So a
Yeah,
lot, a lot of change in the short period of time.
sure, especially since generative AI came out. It's been a whirlwind.
Right. I asked Sean Harrington, I was like, who lives in the space, like literally he teaches it and he runs around this law school and helps he's sort of like a fractional AI, source for the law firm. But like how much time, speaking about AI adoption and the legal trends report, how much time would you suggest a lawyer should be spending a week on learning new AI tools or skills or testing things out? Like, what would you say is a healthy amount? Like
Well,
a minimum or something?
I think they need to the way that I suggest that they figure out what AI can do for them and how they wanna use it is that they subscribe to either ChatGPT or Claude, or if Gemini is already available to them because their firm uses Gemini, Google like yours, and they get, a paid version, and then they use it for a week. The way that I like to
Right.
recommend people do it is anytime you encounter something that you think is, gosh, I don't want to deal with that right now. I'm going to back burner it. Um, Ask yourself, is this something that I think AI might be able to help me with? And does it involve entering confidential information? Like you'll have to decide for yourself before you start using these tools, the parameters of what you think you can and can't enter in there based upon your firm's data, jurisdictional requirements, the tool you're using. So you figure that out up front. But then once you've determined that, you ask yourself, is this something AI can help me with? And is it data that I can enter into the AI tool? And if the answer is yes, try it and see how quickly can you get this done and off your plate. And I tell them I always think of AI as like a really helpful assistant that sits on my shoulder that really wants to help me get things done, that has a pathological lying problem. So like I need to just keep that in mind too.
Did they have to pass what? What did you say?
It has a pathological lying problem.
Oh.
So right, and so like, but you'll find that you're turning to it more and more often for a lot of things that, drafting a description of a talk, right? Like, and or when they come, the CLE companies come, organizers come back and they're like, we need an outline of like the one, a timed outline, and it's like you just tell it, create a timed outline, and it does a great job at stuff like that you'd otherwise be like struggling over and spend 20 minutes half of the time thinking, I don't want to do this right now. What a pain in the butt that I have to do this. The other providers don't require it, like and you waste all your time getting annoyed that you have to do it. And it'll like get that done really quickly. So there's so many things like that. And so I think that they'll find that they'll get a sense of how often they're going to refer to it and use it. And then that'll give them a sense of both how they're going to use it and how often they'll use it. And I think it'll pique their interest in understanding it more and starting to learn more about it. So I think that that's the way to kind of dip your toes in it and start to get a handle on it. And see what your legal specific tools your firm uses. They absolutely have rolled AI out. What do they have? What's available? And start trying to figure out how that works too, because you already trust those providers. May as well use whatever they're offering because it's already linked to all your firm's data, which makes it even more convenient in terms of using it. And the output's usually really helpful and useful.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by all the different things you have to do to run a law firm? Well, you're not alone. So many law firm owners are in the same boat. That's where Staffy steps in. More than 90 firms, just like yours, are leaning on their bilingual virtual staff for legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work, plus their full HR support. I currently have 11 team members with Staffy across my own firm and Power Strategy Group, and it's been a total game changer. Schedule a free initial consultation at staffy.cc, that's stafi.cc, and use the code RUBY, R-U-B-Y, for $500 off.
One of the tools I like was Notebook LM. And I was on an attorney call. Like immigration is a very, very, very dynamic space right now. So we have to digest a lot of information. And there was this case that came out, 60 pages. And another attorney's like, I don't have time for read that, and I was like, I don't either. What am I going to do? So I uploaded it to Notebook LM and it turned into a 20-minute podcast that I listened while I was driving. Very entertaining. Learned some nuggets I wouldn't have otherwise learned because I was going to dismiss that 60-page this court lawsuit, whatever. And that's what's beautiful is that there's all this multi-faceted way to digest information now with AI. And the other one I do a lot is I record messages that turned into emails or whatever on my phone while I'm like driving, just say something and then, or walking around or something. Before it'd be like, I don't know, it would take a while because I'd have to make it look nice and get the key points, or I'd have my EA help me do it or something. But that's one of the things that's been saving me so much time, as well as my notes after my consultation, turning that into post-consult email. And then now everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Those are some, I guess, my 3 favorite little tips that I do that have saved me so much time in just maybe the last 6 or 8 months or something.
Yeah, I use Notebook LM too, but I use it for I'm studying wine certification. I'm up to level 2, WSET level 2, and I'm working on level 3. And it's great if you're trying to study a specific wine region because you can upload some YouTube video, link to YouTube videos, and the transcripts will be added, and then upload the chapter from the book about it, and then like listen to podcasts, look at slideshows, query the database, have it create an outline or a report. And so you get the information in so many different ways that it helps you learn it better. So it's a really great learning tool as well. And I also have Whisperfly. I just wrote for the Above the Law, for the Daily Record, my top iPhone apps. And Notebook LM was one of them. Another one is Whisperflow. Carolyn Elephant, my co-author for the social media book for lawyers that came out in 2010. She had written about that on LinkedIn, and I started using it since then. And it's just a dictation app. It just does a much better job than the built-in,
I've heard about that one. Yeah,
it does a fantastic job with the translating voice to text. So I use that sometimes as well. Not a ton, but I use it because I don't have it on my work computer because I didn't get permission because it does take everything you're saying and puts it in the cloud and
Oh,
brings it. So I don't use it for work. I only use it
yeah.
for personal stuff because
Um,
it's with the whole vetting process with a company like mine, so.
that's true, depending on the requirements for their security privacy for
Yeah.
the firm, what you're allowed to use. Well, it's been really fun talking with you, Nikki, and I think, you reminded me how I wanted to ask you more about this virtual wine vineyard, or what did you say? The virtual winery? Like, can you
So virtual, it's like a winery without walls. We're part of a group in the Finger Lakes of a few wineries that don't have physical footprints yet. Um, and so it just means that, you're selling the wine online and through the wine club and stuff like that, and making
Okay.
it in another bonded winery space, like leasing a little bit of space and stuff.
Okay.
You still have to get your own federal liquor license and state liquor license, and I'm in the process. There's a whole bunch of other ton of compliance stuff that I didn't realize that I was getting into. It's a lot of work, but I'm working my way through it. Thank goodness for generative AI because it's made it a lot easier for me to sort of wade through.
So it's sort of like a virtual law firm, but a virtual winery, but
For
probably
the
more
physical
complicated.
product.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our wines are fermenting right now. And my husband's the winemaker. He is a ICU nurse, but he went to school part-time at the Finger Lakes Community College winemaking program. So he learned to make wine there a couple years ago, and we have a rosé and a dry Riesling fermenting right now, and they should be ready in a month or two to be bottled. So we're
Wow.
excited.
Wow. That's
Navinus 42 Cellars, Navinus 42.com.
okay. All right. We'll have to put that in the show notes.
Oh,
I think I'd heard you on some of the other, the Friday show mentioned it, but I like now I get to ask you directly, so this is great. It's fun to have a non-legal hobby to just use different parts of your brain and challenge you. But I think also like how you learn, to solve problems in that hobby or project can help you. It makes you transferable and helps you see things from a different perspective in the practice of law. And I'm currently renovating a 1940s house. Like
oh wow.
everybody's like, it has good bones. That's about all it has is
A lot of work.
roof, new electricity, didn't even have an AC, and we're in Texas.
Oh my,
I raised it 8 inches from the ground, not physically myself, but I got
right,
some
right.
people to do it. Anyway, so I haven't put general contractor on my LinkedIn profile, but it should be on there.
Right. A lot of work
We
for
should
sure.
we should be done soon, hopefully. So fun fact questions. What is your favorite board game?
So I would say
Or card game?
it's not technically a board game, but my favorite game that I played recently with my husband, it is a physical game. My husband's an ICU nurse, and usually he won't do this kind of thing related to the medical field, but he played this game with me. It's a game, it's called New York City Med, I think, and it gives you four different patients, and you have to like treat them like in the ER, and it has this whole process where you have to make all these decisions, and either they die or they don't die. I think it's so much fun. So like that, so it's my favorite. And
Fascinating.
now I bought an app. We worked through the four patients, and now I found an app that does the same thing, but it's made
Yeah.
for medical professionals, and they can get CME credits from it. So most of the time, the patients either die or I get like a 60% because I do a horrible job because I'm not a medical professional and I kill the people often, but I don't mean to. Try my best.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Um, what's a favorite podcast or book you would recommend to our listeners?
Podcaster book. Well, I mean, I may be biased, but I'm a panelist on Bob's show, but I think it's a ton of fun. And so Bob Ambrogi has a every Friday at 3 a legal tech week show. And I'm a panelist on it. It's a bunch of legal tech journalists, and we talk about the latest news and uh it's a really engaged audience and it's a lot of fun. So I would definitely recommend that. I don't really listen to podcasts, and the books I read mostly are about wine right now because I'm studying for the wine. I don't, I don't know if I have a favorite book. I mean, I don't know. There's a favorite books I've read years ago, but there's not like any of that one I can think of right now besides like wine books.
Well, I used to read a lot of business books, and then I got like they started all saying the same thing to me, and I was like, when I was writing my books and stuff, and so I sort of change around from different genres. But I think that's good. And actually, I have to see what's on my Audible. I'm traveling today. I usually like to listen to some stuff while I'm on the plane. Um, okay, so the next two questions are, what do you think your superpower is?
I think it's pattern recognition across multiple sort of disciplines. I've always been able to I I don't have that well, I have an entrepreneurial spirit, but it's not coming up with ideas for companies or for, it's I'm not really good at that, but as soon as someone comes up with an idea, I'm like, "Oh, that's gonna take off," or "This is this small little thing over here that you wouldn't think is a trend, but it's a trend." And that's why I think I'm good at what I do is because I'm able to see those things coming and then translate them and make them relevant to legal professionals through writing and speaking, which are sort of things that I'm also pretty good at. So, but I think it's like the pattern recognition and the ability to recognize and translate useful information to lawyers interested in tech and running their firms.
Awesome. What would you say is a habit that contributes to your success?
Um, Curiosity. I don't know if it's a habit, but it's a personality trait. I mean, I'm really curious and I love to learn about new things and I love to go and do deep dives into, I used to love doing legal research and I would love handing it off to somebody, not having to actually write the I like writing memos too, but sometimes it's fun just to do these deep dives into a single topic and find that answer. And so I really love to do that. Like I do that internally with the company. Sometimes people will reach out to me and I'm sort of serve as an analyst across the company in addition to writing our legal industry report. Um, in addition to the external work that I do to create exposure for the brand and the company. But um, I like it when people ask me to get a whole bunch of information. I love to find it and just hand it off to them. So, but it's the
Okay.
curiosity that drives that. So,
Well, that's good to have that help like fuels the constant learning and finding the pattern. I like to watch a lot of detective or murder mystery shows because I think I'm a detective at heart, but I see that in consultations, like they're telling me a situation and I'm trying to solve their problem. And so
yeah.
the pattern recognition, the solving the problems, it's exciting. I find a lot
Yeah.
of joy in that. Nikki, it's been so great. Thank you for joining me today. And how can people find you and stay in touch with you?
LinkedIn is now probably the best platform to find me on. Which would have shocked me when I wrote with Carolyn Oliphant, the social media book that came out in 2010. Never in a million years would I have predicted at that point that LinkedIn would be where it is today. It used to just be an online profile or an online resume. But so LinkedIn is the best place. And then you can email me at niki.black@mycase.com. So it's niki.black@mycase.com. Those are probably the two best places or best ways to reach me.
Awesome. And is there any other Kaleidoscope is coming up in September? It's going to be
Yep.
in Vegas, right?
Yeah, Kaleidoscope's coming up in Vegas, and that's going to be great. It's our last year we launched Kaleidoscope, and this is our second year, and we're super excited about it. And we're working on the agenda, lining up all the speakers right now. So it should be great. And mark your calendars. I think September 2nd to 4th. Don't put me on that. Wait, let me see. And yeah, I should probably know that off the top of my head. I'm 99% sure that's correct. Let's see. Let
I,
me confirm.
I
Oh
think
no,
it's
22nd to 24th.
mid-September.
I was so close.
Yeah,
September
September
22nd to
22nd,
24th.
23rd. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today, and enjoyed our conversation and everything from the insights from the report, but as well as the disparate, adoption of AI amongst the law firms and lawyers, but then also talking about like the need for training, and the change in the way information is shared on AI in law schools, and sort of where we're going to be at in the future with law students coming out of law school. And I don't know, we as well as some of our tips and that we use. And so we sort of covered a lot of topics within AI and legal tech adoption. So as well as also learning about the virtual vineyard winery. I like that idea. And we
That's
wish you
cool.
all the best, and we'll definitely have to put all that information in the show notes. Well, thanks everyone. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Power Up Your Practice. I'm Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. We love your reviews, so if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us one and share this podcast with someone else so that they can know what you've been learning on our show. And make sure to check out the Power Up Your Practice book. It's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon. It's packed with 25 chapters of strategies to grow and streamline your firm. And we also have the free Power Hub community on School to keep the conversation going in between the episodes. So make sure to keep powering up your practice, and we'll see you next time.